Sorry, senior, but right now, I really just want to focus on my studies. The macroeconomics material this second semester is taking up quite a lot of my time, and honestly, I'm not really looking to think about dating yet, Yin said in a soft but firm voice. She lowered her head slightly, giving him the most polite smile she could manage on her beautiful face. Her long strands of hair fell over part of her shoulders as she tried to look as genuinely sorry as possible. In front of her, a popular third-year senior from their faculty let out a long sigh. His face turned pale as he tried to hide his obvious disappointment. But because Yin's rejection was so gentle, classy, and completely reasonable, he couldn't really push her any further. There was simply no way to get mad at a girl with such sincere eyes. All right, Yin, I get it, the senior replied with a forced, awkward smile. Good luck with your studies. If you ever need help finding journal references, you know where to find me. Thanks, senior. I'll keep that in mind, Yin replied before the man turned around and walked away down the faculty hallway with heavy steps. Yin let out a long sigh of relief, leaning her back against the metal locker door behind her. But that relief only lasted for 2 seconds before a soft yet demanding pat landed on her shoulder. How many victims is that this week? Third or fourth? Mina, her best friend, teased. She had apparently been standing beside her for who knew how long, her arms folded across her chest. Mina narrowed her eyes, giving Yin that suspicious and accusing look she could never escape. Don't exaggerate, Mina. It's only 2, Yin defended herself, her hands quickly becoming busy rearranging the thick books in her arms to avoid her best friend's sharp stare. 2 this week, Yin, and your excuse is always exactly the same, like a broken record. Focus on school, focus on studying, busy schedule. You really think I'm buying that crap? Mina scoffed softly before leaning her face closer until their shoulders touched. Listen, Miss Smarty Pants, you're literally the pride of the department. Your GPA is almost perfect without you having to sacrifice all your free time and social life. The real reason you keep turning down all those hot guys lining up for you isn't because of these economics books, is it? Yin turned her face away, feeling her cheeks start to warm after being caught. I don't know what you're talking about, Mina. Don't start again. Oh, you know exactly what I'm talking about, Mina whispered, her tone turning teasing but still full of meaning. Her index finger suddenly pointed straight down the hallway, toward the campus garden separated from the locker area by a huge transparent glass wall. Your real reason is sitting right over there, reading his thick textbook, wearing his black earphones, and looking like he couldn't care less about the rest of the human population on this campus. Unable to stop herself, as if pulled by some gravity she couldn't fight, Yin followed Mina's finger with her eyes. Outside, on one of the wooden benches in the garden beneath the shade of a huge oak tree, sat Jungkook. The golden afternoon sunlight streamed through the gaps between the leaves, falling across his sharp jawline, which looked insanely captivating from the side. His black hair was slightly messy from the spring breeze, and his eyes were so intense and focused on the book resting in his lap. The air around him seemed to freeze, creating an invisible distance, a wall of ice that made anyone, even professors, hesitate to approach him without a good reason. Jungkook was the campus idol, an undeniable universal truth in their faculty. But the guy was also famous for his ice-cold reputation. No friendly smiles, no pointless small talk. Mina, keep your voice down, Yin hissed in panic. Her heart suddenly started beating twice as fast just from looking at the guy's silhouette from this far away. That weird nervous feeling always crept into her stomach whenever his name came up. How long are you gonna keep doing this, Yin? Mina lowered her voice, looking at her best friend with a mix of sympathy and exasperation. You keep turning down all these nice, good-looking guys who openly like you, who treat you like a queen, just for someone who might not even know you watch him every day from behind these lockers. You know Jungkook's reputation, right? He's already turned down at least 5 of the most popular girls in our department without even batting an eye. He has no heart, Yin. He's literally colder than winter itself. Yin lowered her head, unconsciously squeezing the edge of her thick book until her fingers turned white. I know. That's exactly why I'm scared, Mina. If girls who are way prettier, more confident, and braver than me got rejected by him without mercy, what chance do I have? I'm just a classmate who sometimes sits 2 rows behind him. Besides, I think I'm pretty happy just liking him from afar. At least this way, I'm not messing anything up. I won't have to get my heart broken and cry for days. Happy, you say? Mina clicked her tongue in annoyance, grabbing both of Yin's shoulders and making her look directly into her eyes. Listen to me. What if tomorrow, or next week, some girl confesses to him, and somehow, I don't know, by some freaking miracle, Jungkook actually likes her and says yes? You really want to watch him walk down this hallway holding some other girl's hand right in front of you? You think you can watch him laugh for someone else? Mina's words hit Yin right in the chest. The image of normally cold Jungkook suddenly smiling softly and gently patting another girl's head made her chest ache like crazy. The anxiety she had been forcing deep into the corner of her heart suddenly came rushing violently to the surface, scaring her. Then, what am I supposed to do? Yin's voice trembled softly, her rational defenses collapsing instantly in the face of her fear of losing him. Tell him how you feel, Mina said firmly, staring straight into Yin's eyes. You're Park Yin. You're not just some random girl. You're freaking amazing. You're beautiful. You're smart. And you've got such a warm personality. You've got everything any sane guy could ever want. If there's one girl on this entire campus who has the best shot at melting the ice around Jungkook's heart, I'd bet it's you. Do it, Yin. At least you'll know you tried. It's way better to get rejected after having the guts to make a move than to live with regret and keep wondering what if he gets taken by someone else right in front of you. Yin bit her lower lip hard, her eyes glancing back toward the glass wall. Outside, Jungkook was now standing. He slipped his book into his black backpack, took out one of his earphones, and got ready to leave the garden. Yin's heart was in complete turmoil, roaring like a storm. Caught between her fear of rejection and the panic of losing her chance, those two emotions battled fiercely for control of her mind. Yet Mina's encouragement had just given her a strange little burst of courage that suddenly rushed through her veins. All right, Yin finally whispered. Her hands felt cold and sweaty, but her mind was made up. I'm gonna try talking to him. Today. Mina smiled so widely, her eyes sparkling with pride before giving Yin a little push on the back. That's my brave bestie. Go, go, go. He's heading toward the North Wing Library. It's always quiet around this time. This is your golden chance, Yin. Don't come back to me until you've told him everything. With every step feeling heavy, as if she were walking through quicksand, yet forcing herself forward with all her strength, Yin jogged after Jungkook, following his long strides. The north wing of the library was indeed rarely visited by students, giving it a peaceful atmosphere. Its hallways were filled with shadows cast by rows of towering bookshelves and the golden afternoon sunlight streaming through the large, slightly dusty windows. Yin watched his broad, straight back, dressed in a neat shirt, disappear into one of the aisles in the history literature section. Gathering what little breath she had left, Yin quickened her pace until she stood right at the entrance of the aisle where Jungkook was. He was looking for a book, his long fingers slowly running along the tightly packed spines of thick books, a simple movement that somehow looked incredibly captivating. Jungkook, Yin called softly. Her voice sounded way too quiet, trembling in her own ears, but luckily, it was still loud enough to break the silence and make the man stop what he was doing. Jungkook slowly turned around. His expression was blank, emotionless, and his pitch-black, sharp eyes stared straight into Yin's eyes. There was no smile, no casual friendliness, just that calm, commanding stare that always made Yin's knees feel weak. Yeah, Jungkook replied shortly. His voice was deep and heavy, calmly echoing through the quiet library air. Can we talk for a sec? Yin tightly gripped the edge of her skirt. Physically, there were only a few small steps between them, but to Yin, that distance felt like thousands of miles she had to cross. Jungkook lowered his gaze slightly, looking at the book in his hand before slowly closing it. He slipped one hand into his pants pocket, then turned his whole body to face Yin. He didn't say a word, just stood there waiting, as if giving Yin the whole stage to speak. I'm sorry if I'm bothering you, Yin began, her voice still slightly shaky, but she forced herself to lift her chin and look straight into Jungkook's eyes without blinking. She couldn't back out now. But there's something I need to tell you. I've been keeping it to myself for a long time. Something I kept hiding because I was scared. Jungkook's brows furrowed slightly, such a subtle change that Yin probably wouldn't have noticed if she hadn't been watching him so closely. Just tell me, Yin. I like you. Those 4 words finally slipped from her lips, breaking the long, tense silence between them. Yin's chest rose and fell rapidly, her breathing instantly speeding up after finally dropping the time bomb that had been sitting painfully in her heart for months. I like you, Jungkook. I really like you. And I don't think I can keep holding it all in by myself and pretending I'm just some normal classmate who can only watch you from afar. The silence that followed felt like pure torture. Jungkook stared at her in silence for a painfully long moment. There was no hint of shock on his handsome face, but strangely, there was no disgust or annoyance either, the kind he usually showed openly whenever he turned other girls down. His dark eyes instead seemed to soften slightly, as if he were studying the anxious expression on Yin's face in a way that was impossible to read. The seconds dragged by slowly, and Yin felt like her heart was genuinely about to burst out of her chest from the weight. Finally, Jungkook let out a slow, heavy breath. He stepped forward once, closing the distance between them, but somehow, the aura around him clearly built another wall of ice, a gentle rejection. Yin, Jungkook said softly, calling her name in a voice that was probably gentler than anything she had ever heard from him before. Yet the words that followed felt like deadly chunks of ice stabbing straight into Yin's heart. Thanks for being honest with me, but I'm sorry, I can't accept your feelings. Yin's world seemed to stop spinning for a split second. The oxygen suddenly disappeared from her lungs. Even though she had prepared herself for this worst-case scenario countless times on her way there, hearing it straight from the man's lips still hit her with a painfully real wave of heartbreak. Can I ask why? Yin forced a bitter little smile, desperately trying to hold back the hot tears starting to build in her eyes. Is it because there's already someone else you like? Jungkook slowly shook his head, his expression remaining steady, calm, and controlled, as if he wasn't affected by the emotions unfolding right in front of him. No, there's no one else. It's just that, right now, I really want to focus on my studies. Our schedule and classes this second semester are seriously intense, and I don't have time to think about anything outside of school, especially dating. I'm sorry, Yin. You're a good girl, and you deserve someone better than me, but I really can't. After finishing his rejection in such a neat and final way, Jungkook gave her a polite nod, then turned around and walked right past Yin without another word. He left behind a faint scent of mint and his masculine cologne in the air, as if nothing important had just happened. Yin stood frozen where she was, her knees barely able to support her own weight. Jungkook's words kept replaying over and over inside her head like a broken record. I want to focus on my studies. I don't want to think about anything outside of school. I don't want to date. Yin knew those words all too well. Very well. Because they were the exact words she always used as her main weapon whenever a guy approached her. A sweet, polite, yet deadly lie created solely to cover up the real reason in her heart. She already had Jungkook in it. Yin's lips trembled as she held back her tears when a sharp thought suddenly struck her. If that excuse had been nothing but a lie she deliberately made up for herself, could that same excuse also be a lie coming from Jungkook? Slowly, Yin turned her trembling body around, staring at Jungkook's broad, straight back as he walked farther and farther away before finally disappearing around the corner at the end of the library hallway. Was Jungkook the same as her? Could it be that behind that klitsch excuse he had calmly given, the ice-cold man was actually secretly hiding another girl who had already taken over his heart? 1 week had passed since that afternoon in the library, but the awkwardness hanging between Yin and Jungkook only seemed to grow thicker. You're crazy if you're gonna let that fake rejection ruin your weekend, Mina complained as she tossed a golden invitation onto the cafeteria table, right in front of Yin, who had been lazily stirring her iced tea without any interest. Yura invited the whole class to her family's villa. Pool, barbecue, and freedom from that damn macroeconomics assignment. You have to come, Yin, no arguments. Mina, I'm not sure, Yin sighed, staring at the invitation uncertainly. Jungkook's definitely gonna come with his group. You know Minju and Jaehyun would never miss a free party. I'm not ready to see him yet. It's just too embarrassing. Embarrassing for what? Mina's voice rose, making a few people glance over at their table. She immediately leaned forward and whispered with emphasis. You confessed your feelings like a brave girl, and he rejected you with some lame-ass cliché excuse. If he's really so focused on studying, then why was he first in line to sign up for this weekend party, huh? Show him you're not falling apart just because he rejected you. Prove that Park Yin is still gorgeous and doesn't give a damn. Yin bit her lower lip, staring blankly toward the end of the cafeteria where Jungkook was quietly laughing, a rare sight, because of something Yoonwoo had joked about. That laugh made Yin's chest ache all over again. Do you think he really has someone else? God, stop torturing yourself with assumptions. Mina clicked her tongue in annoyance. If you want to know the truth, you have to come and watch him yourself. Wear your prettiest summer dress. Let's make him regret turning you down, Yin. The cool night breeze felt refreshing, but the atmosphere around the pool at Yura's family villa was warm and lively. Music blasted through the speakers, filling the night with energy, mixed with the laughter and chatter of dozens of students finally getting a break from their campus routine. Yin stood in a corner of the wooden deck, holding a glass of cold orange juice. She wore a light blue knee-length summer dress that hugged her figure perfectly, making her fair skin glow beneath the dim lights. A few male classmates had already tried to strike up conversations with her, but Yin only responded with polite little smiles. Her eyes, completely out of her control, kept stealing glances across the pool. Over there, Jungkook stood with Minju, Yoonwoo, and Jaehyun. He looked completely relaxed in a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. But what made Yin's heart race like crazy was the fact that every time she looked over, she always caught Jungkook's dark eyes staring straight at her through the crowd. The man didn't smile, nor did he look away when she caught him staring. He simply looked at Yin with such intensity that it made her breath catch. "See that?" Mina whispered, suddenly appearing behind her and nudging Yin's arm. "Mr. Too busy studying hasn't taken his eyes off you this whole time. If he doesn't like you, then what the hell is that stare supposed to mean? Maybe he just happened to be looking this way, Mina. Don't give me false hope again. If he liked me, he would have accepted my feelings," Yin replied softly, lowering her head. Without either of them noticing, another pair of eyes was watching their interaction with a burning flash of hatred. Hannah, standing not far from where Jungkook was, squeezed her plastic cup until it crumpled. Hannah had been approaching Jungkook for months, giving him attention and even willingly doing his group assignments. Yet Jungkook had never looked at her the way he was looking at Yin tonight. A dark, poisonous jealousy boiled inside Hannah's chest, completely taking over her common sense. Hannah walked gracefully along the edge of the pool, a sweet smile curling across her lips that never reached her eyes as she approached Yin. "Hey Yin, cute dress. You look like you're really trying tonight," Hannah greeted her in an overly friendly tone. Yin looked up, slightly surprised by Hannah's presence since she rarely ever spoke to her. "Thanks Hannah, you look pretty too." "Of course," Hannah chuckled, stepping closer until Yin was cornered right at the edge of the deep swimming pool. "I heard Jungkook just rejected you. Wow, I'm honestly surprised you still had the nerve to show up at this party. If I were you, I'd probably lock myself in my room out of embarrassment." Yin's eyes widened, her face instantly heating up. "How did you?" "There are no secrets on our campus, Yin," Hannah whispered mockingly, leaning forward. "You think you're special? You think that innocent little face of yours can get anyone you want? Jungkook is way out of your league." "I never thought I was special, Hannah. And what does any of this have to do with you?" Yin shot back, her voice starting to tremble with anger and embarrassment. She tried taking a step back to avoid Hannah's intimidating stare, but she forgot that her heel was already right at the edge of the pool tiles. "What does it have to do with me?" Hannah hissed, her sly smile widening. She quickly stepped forward, pretending to lose her balance after her high heel caught on something, then threw her weight hard against Yin's body. "It has everything to do with the fact that you're in my way." The shove was completely unexpected and incredibly forceful. Yin let out a muffled scream as she completely lost her balance. Her body stumbled backward, cutting through the air before finally crashing into the pool with a loud splash. The cold water immediately rushed into her nose and ears. At first, Yin tried to stay calm. She could swim. She just needed to kick her legs upward. But as her leg prepared to move, an excruciating cramp suddenly seized her right calf like thousands of needles stabbing into it. Yin screamed underwater, bubbles spilling from her mouth. The pain paralyzed half her body, pulling her deeper toward the bottom of the pool. Complete panic took over as her lungs began burning, desperately demanding oxygen. Above the surface, the music suddenly stopped. Mina's hysterical scream tore through the night. "Yin, help. Yin's not coming back up." The students panicked, rushing toward the edge of the pool to see what was happening. But before anyone could even think, a black shadow shot through the crowd. Jungkook, not even bothering to take off his shoes, jumped straight into the pool at lightning speed. Water splashed high into the air. Jungkook dove through the cold depths, his eyes desperately searching for the blue dress beneath the pool lights. When his hands finally grabbed Yin's limp waist, he pulled her body up with all his strength, wrapping her tightly in his arms and carrying her through the surface of the water. Yin, wake up." Jungkook's hoarse voice boomed through the night, filled with a desperate tone no one had ever heard from him before. He lifted Yin's limp body onto the edge of the pool, then quickly climbed out after her. The entire villa instantly fell into a terrifying silence. Everyone held their breath. Hannah backed away several steps, her trembling hand covering her mouth, her face turning as pale as a sheet as she stared at the horrifying scene in front of her. She never meant for things to go this far. She only wanted to embarrass Yin. Jungkook roughly but shakily patted Yin's cheek. "Yin, please open your eyes, Yin." The guy who always seemed so cold and untouchable now looked completely fragile and panicked. Water droplets from his hair fell onto Yin's deathly pale face. Seeing no response and no movement in Yin's chest, Jungkook didn't waste a single second. He tilted Yin's head back, pinched her nose, then pressed his lips against hers, desperately giving her rescue breaths in front of dozens of frozen eyes. After 2 breaths, his strong hands pressed down on Yin's chest, performing repeated compressions. Please, please come back to me. Don't leave me, Jungkook murmured quietly between compressions, his voice breaking. One final compression, and Yin suddenly choked violently. The girl turned onto her side, coughing hard as she expelled water and desperately searched for air. Mina immediately screamed in relief and hugged Yin from the side. Jungkook wiped his soaked face with both hands, closing his eyes as he let out a long breath filled with overwhelming relief. His chest was rising and falling rapidly. Unable to bear looking at that expression, Hannah turned around and ran back into the villa, carrying her guilt and complete defeat with her. She truly couldn't stand seeing the worry on Jungkook's face, knowing it was all for Yin. An hour passed like a long nightmare. Yin sat against the bed in one of the villa's guest rooms, wearing warm, dry clothes wrapped around her body. Her hands were still trembling slightly as she held a cup of warm tea. Mina sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes still puffy after telling Yin every detail of what had happened in the pool earlier. He gave me CPR? Yin whispered in disbelief, her face burning as she imagined the man's lips touching hers in front of everyone. Not just that, Yin, Mina sobbed, holding her best friend's hand. You should have seen his face. He looked like a guy who was literally dying because he was scared of losing you. A guy who wants to focus on studying wouldn't be crying and begging you to open your eyes, Yin. You need to talk to him right now. With the little strength and determination she had managed to gather, Yin stood up. She needed to thank him, and she needed to demand the truth from him. Yin slowly stepped out of the room, walking down the villa hallway, which was now much quieter because most of the students had chosen to gather in the living room to calm themselves down. At the far end of the dimly lit back balcony, away from all the noise, Yin saw that familiar broad back. Jungkook was sitting alone in a chair. He had already changed into a gray sweater, staring blankly into the darkness of the garden with his shoulders still visibly tense. Yin walked closer, the sound of her footsteps making Jungkook turn around. There was no annoyed expression on his face this time, no wall of rejection or desire to leave. He simply stayed seated, letting Yin close the distance between them until she stood right in front of him. Thank you, Yin said softly, her trembling voice breaking the silence of the night. Mina told me everything. Thank you for saving me, Jungkook. Jungkook looked into Yin's eyes with an unreadable expression, but there was clearly a burning softness in them. He didn't look away even for a second as he replied, Are you feeling better now? I'm okay. Yin nervously gripped the edge of her sweater, gathering the courage to look straight into the eyes of the man who had rejected her yet was willing to risk his life for her. The tension in the air felt so thick, suffocating yet somehow pulling the two of them closer. But there's one thing I don't get. Why did you jump into the pool? There were dozens of people there, including our other classmates. So why did you have to be the one to save me like that? Completely freaking out. Jungkook stayed silent for quite a while. Her question seemed to strip away the walls he had worked so hard to build. The sound of crickets in the night and the faint beat of music coming from inside the villa were the only things filling the silence between them. Jungkook lowered his head, letting out a long, rough sigh as he rubbed his face with both palms. When he looked at Yin again, the cold, controlled stare that had always defined him was completely gone. All that remained was the vulnerability of a man who had just been faced with his greatest fear. Because I was scared something would happen to you, Yin, Jungkook finally answered. His voice sounded incredibly hoarse, almost like a heartbreaking whisper. When I saw you drowning, when I saw you not coming back up, and it felt like the air just wouldn't reach your lungs, it felt like my whole world stopped. My heart felt like it was being crushed. I didn't care how many hundreds of people were there. I didn't care about anything except making sure you opened your eyes again. Yin's eyes grew hot. Her chest pounded wildly as she heard the confession spilling from the man's lips. Yet the pain from his rejection the other day still left a wound that forced her to build a wall around herself. You're lying. Yin's voice trembled, tears beginning to pool in her eyes. If you really care about me that much, if you're really scared of losing me, then why did you reject me, Jungkook? Why did you tell me to go away because you wanted to focus on studying, if you were just gonna act like your own life depended on me in the end? Jungkook squeezed his eyes shut, as if Yin's words were daggers piercing straight through his chest. He stepped forward, closing the distance between them, but kept both hands at his sides, clenching them tightly as if he were forcing himself not to pull the girl in front of him into his arms. Because what I told you back then was the truth, Yin. Well, part of the truth, Jungkook said quietly. He stared deeply into Yin's teary eyes. I really did have a rule for myself not to date while I'm in college. My schedule, my goals, my scholarship. All of it needs my full attention. Turning down girls who came after me was always easy. I never felt even a little guilty watching them walk away, because to me, they were just distractions. Yin swallowed, the ache stabbing her heart all over again. Then, what makes me different? I'm just a distraction to you too, right? No, you're not a distraction. Jungkook quickly cut her off, his voice rising slightly, filled with restrained desperation. That's exactly the problem. You're different. After I rejected you in the library, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even open my book. I felt like the biggest idiot and jerk in the world for hurting you. That guilt kept haunting me every second. But when I rejected other girls, I never felt guilty at all. Jungkook paused for a moment, his chest rising and falling with quick breaths. He finally gathered the courage to raise his hand, his long, warm fingers moving hesitantly before gently touching Yin's cheek, wiping away a tear that had just fallen from the corner of her eye. The touch sent an electric shock through her, leaving Yin completely frozen. I didn't reject you because I don't have feelings for you, Jungkook whispered, his eyes tracing every inch of Yin's face with a tenderness that completely stole her sanity. I rejected you because I was a coward. I kept holding myself back and denying my own feelings. The truth is, I've been noticing you for a long time, Yin. Ever since you started sitting 2 rows behind me, ever since you kept borrowing the same economic history book I used, I've secretly liked you. I like you so much that it feels like it's tearing down every rule I've built for myself. Yin's breath caught. The world around her seemed to stop spinning for the second time, but this time, it wasn't because of pain. It was because of an overwhelming happiness that left her completely speechless. You like me? Yin squeaked in disbelief, staring at the tall man in front of her as if he were an illusion that could disappear at any moment. Jungkook smiled, a small, genuine, warm smile that he had never shown anyone else on campus. Very much. You have no idea how miserable I felt every time I saw guys from our department trying to get close to you. You're beautiful, smart, and you've got such a warm heart. Who wouldn't fall for you? Every time I saw some guy talking to you or even just buying you coffee, I'd get so damn uneasy right here. Jungkook pointed at his chest. I know you turned them down a lot, Jungkook continued, his voice growing softer, filled with an unexpected insecurity. But I was always haunted by this fear. What if one day some guy actually manages to make you smile? And after stupidly rejecting you, I only got more anxious, thinking, what if some other guy takes my place in your mind while I can only stand there doing nothing because of my own stupidity? Yin fell silent, her lips slightly parted as she listened to such an honest and vulnerable confession from the supposedly untouchable Jeon Jungkook. Suddenly, all the weight and heartbreak that had been tormenting her for the past week vanished without a trace. A small laugh mixed with a sob escaped Yin's lips. Why are you laughing? Jungkook asked, confused, even as his fingers moved to intertwine with Yin's free hand, holding it tightly as if he were afraid she might run away. Because you're seriously such an idiot, Yin sobbed with a huge smile, squeezing Jungkook's hand just as tightly. You know why I turned all those guys down? You really think I rejected them because I wanted to focus on studying like you? Jungkook frowned. Wasn't that the reason? Yin slowly shook her head, staring straight into the dark pools of his eyes. I turned them down because my heart was already full. There was no room left for anyone else. The real reason I rejected them was because I liked you, waited for you, and hoped that one day you'd notice me. Shock was clearly written all over Jungkook's face. For a few seconds, he could only stare at Yin without blinking, processing the fact that all his jealousy and fear had been completely pointless. The smile on Jungkook's lips slowly grew wider, stretching all the way to his eyes and creating tiny creases at the corners that somehow made him look even more insanely handsome. Without hesitating anymore, Jungkook pulled Yin into his arms. He wrapped both strong arms around her waist, burying his face against the crook of Yin's neck. Yin closed her eyes, returning the hug by wrapping her arms around Jungkook's broad back. Their warmth chased away the cool night breeze of Punkak, bringing together two hearts that had spent so long secretly longing for each other through silence and doubt. So, Jungkook murmured between their embrace, his voice low and trembling with happiness. Is that offer you made me back in the library still on the table? Because I don't care about my stupid study rule anymore. I just want to be with you, Yin. I want to date you. I want to be the only guy who gets to hold your hand. Yin nodded against Jungkook's embrace, happy tears falling onto the shoulder of his sweater. That offer never expires for you. Jungkook slowly loosened his embrace, gazing at Yin's face with obvious longing before bringing her hand to his lips and gently kissing the back of it. They then sat side by side on the long bench on the balcony, with no distance between them anymore. Their fingers stayed tightly intertwined on their laps as they traded stories and little laughs that broke the silence of the night. They talked heart to heart, letting out every misunderstanding and allowing the love that had been put on hold to finally bloom completely. Meanwhile, from a distance, through the slightly open sliding glass door of the villa, several pairs of eyes were watching the sweet moment. Mina stood behind the curtain, squeezing the edge of a sofa cushion with a huge grin that made her cheeks hurt. She held back a squeal of excitement so she wouldn't ruin the moment. Beside her, Minju, Yoonwoo, and Jaehyun stood frozen with their mouths half open, still unable to believe that their friend, who was as cold as a chunk of polar ice, could now smile that softly and hold a girl's hand with such obvious affection. And not far away, from another side of the villa, Hannah stared at the scene with her breath caught in her throat. There was no room left for denial. The way Jungkook looked at Yin, the way he leaned closer to listen to every word she said, and the way their hands stayed tightly intertwined. Their every movement and piece of body language was more than enough to explain everything. They were no longer just classmates. No official announcement was needed for anyone watching them that night to figure out that Yin and Jungkook were officially dating.